It's Thursday, and it's time for your weekly dose of Future Law Bootcamp. I'm your host, Joe Borstein, CEO of LexFusion and general total freak about legal innovation. Today, I'm here with Esther Bowers, Director of Practice Management at Honigman. Hi, Esther.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, thanks for being on. As always on Future Law, the lawyers of tomorrow meet the change makers of today. We're going to discuss the tectonic forces bubbling under the surface of the $800 billion plus global legal industry. Globalization today is allowing lawyers and other professionals from all over the earth to collaborate seamlessly on legal work. Technology is automating routine processes and relentlessly crawling up the value chain. And the status quo of legal regulation is being questioned and changed, allowing professionals outside of the bar to associate with lawyers to solve legal problems at scale and also enjoy some of the profits of traditional legal work. And finally, investment dollars are pouring in. These investors, mostly who are not lawyers, see an opportunity to make a broken system dramatically better and earn a nice return in the process. Futurist Peter Diamandis likes to say, you want to make $1 billion? Figure out how to help 1 billion people. That stuck with me. Law affects every single person on this planet. There are so many people to help, a lot of money to make, and a lot of excitement in the process. So whatever drives you, idealism, greed, or even just excitement, I always beg all lawyers to pay a little attention to what's going on in this legal innovation space, and you might just find your purpose here. So again, today we're talking to Esther Bowers, Director of Practice Management at Honigman. Esther, please tell everybody a little bit about your legal innovation role and the path that got you here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. Well, I'll start off by talking about my role, which is pretty interesting, to be honest. I work with our firm's operating committee, and our priorities are focused in large part on innovating how we our legal operations of the firm. So breaking down the silos that naturally exist between practices and administrative groups, between the administrative groups themselves and between the practices themselves, and discovering ways to do business in a more innovative way, in a more seamless way, and in a more efficient way. So that is, it lends itself to a very broad base of like sort of directives.
Yeah, that's a big
but it's exciting. It's exciting because there's so many different areas that can be, we can look at improving, and it's not just from a tech perspective, but it's also process and people and sort of alignment of skill sets, and then having technology to help support all of those workflows.
Yeah, on the biggest picture or from the broadest scope, to people that aren't as familiar with it, what does practice management mean to you? Like, what are the tools involved in that tool belt?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of looking at the practice, breaking it down into component parts, understanding where there are opportunities to automate, opportunities to improve margin, opportunities to move work to the more appropriate resource. And that could go up, that could go down, but also all while alignment with looking at how the client, like our service delivery model, and how our client's experience feels in all of that. So yeah. Kind of breaking it down, looking at the economics of all of it, and how do we improve both our margins and the client's experience at the same time.
It seems to me that this role has been massively elevated across law firms in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Is that a real perception, or is that just in my imagination?
No, I think these roles have. Yes, I think it's pretty new to the industry, no doubt. But it's because the industry is fast moving. Although at times I say that I'm not comfortable with this pace. It's not fast enough for me. But the change is slow. But for legal, this is fast. Yeah. There's a lot going on, and I think that firms are looking to business professionals to put their arms around that and kind of help to manage what this looks like, help us understand the direction we need to go and present these ideas from a business perspective. And I think that's where these roles add a ton of value, is to understand the intersection of operations and the practice. So it's been, I think that's why these things have really been taking off.
Yeah. So let's say I'm not a lawyer, I'm a client, and I heard what you just said, and I completely agree. I'm like, oh my God, of course they should be breaking things into their component parts, finding the right resources, bringing in the right technology. Well, I would ask the question, well, why now? Why in the last 5 or 10 years? Why law firms have been around since time immemorial, right? It's been a part of the economic landscape, certainly as long as actually recorded history. Why are we just paying attention to legal innovation and practice management these days?
Great question, because I think that it's largely driven by clients. I mean, to flip it back around, right? I mean, if you're not asking for it, clients are not, or firms are not motivated to make changes on their own, in large part. I mean, that's a pretty generalization, but at some point, clients are putting pressure on law firms to either to price differently, to provide service in a more collaborative way. I mean, they're looking to their firms to be more innovative. They're asking what innovation means for you guys, and what are you doing for, what does your innovation efforts mean for me? And so I think that, clients would ask, like, why aren't firms doing this? It's because I think clients for a long time have not been putting the pressure on firms to do something different.
Right. So if it's like an evolutionary theory, there was no pressure to change. So why change? It was a good business.
Right.
Yeah. And it still is. So we talked a little bit about practice management. We talked before the show about you building something really special at Honigman, which is a captive. I don't know if you want to call it like an ALSP or a law company or service provider, but you built that from scratch for the firm. You mentioned it was a big success. Tell us a little bit about that story. Like what made the firm decide to do that, and how did you start from scratch building that?
Sure. Well, I think that the firm recognized that there was a lot of work that we were unable to do at our price point, and that we had the opportunity to further institutionalize clients and offer a broader range of services that we hadn't been able to do before, and capture some of that revenue. And so with our current model, or our existing model, it just didn't make sense from a margin perspective. But we saw opportunity, and we saw a ton of available talent in the market to establish a non-partnership track that has career progression, that has meaningful training and development and structure and integration into the firm. So what's interesting about this model is that it services all departments across the firm. So the individuals who are in this program, in this track, get exposure to practice areas all over. So that's what's attractive to them. The folks that we've hired to bring into this program find enjoyment in being able to take on projects in IP and projects in litigation, and they have just a varied areas of experience. And as they progress, they're able to sort of determine which practice area they ultimately want to begin to specialize in. And that's when you see the promotion through the professional attorney track, is what we call it. But to do that, I mean, we had to look at a number of different factors. We had to consider, employee status, benefits, compensation. Where are these people situated? What's the management of the program? How does work come in? How is it evaluated? How do we structure it from a financial systems perspective? Where do we recruit these individuals from? What does the role look like? How do we define, promotions and that sort of thing? Like, do we build out, we have a full core competency model so that there's some structure in their development, knowing exactly where their career path is going. We looked at how to integrate them into the practices within the firm, how to train on all these different practice areas. That was a big one, right?
Yeah.
To have the partnership buy in. There has to be some confidence and some credentialing of this program to have success, right? So we looked at that. We looked at, how do we price the individuals? Like, what's our margins? What is our go-to-market strategy? And then sort of now we're at the point where we're packaging services. How do we put this together for clients to further expand relationships? So up until now, it's kind of been like, I don't want to say overflow, but it's been like we are in need of individuals in particular practice areas, so it allows us to be flexible. And that is a huge advantage for us, is to be able to take on work where the demand was greater than we had resources for before. But now we're looking at how do we become more proactive in going to the market with what we have, what we're able to package. So it was a really exciting program, and it's been neat to see the success and the adoption within the firm. Obviously, there's growing pains with anything, and we learn and we adjust accordingly. But we've had a lot of adoption and interest in this offering.
Yeah, so you just a bunch of really interesting themes there. One of which is change management. Obviously, one of the goals in a captive, obviously, is to make sure that the firm actually uses its own tool, right, or its own resource. This is a big topic in the entire legal tech and legal innovation community. How did you go about trying to ensure, to the extent possible, people were aware of and using the resources you were building for them?
So I think one of the most critical things I've learned in any project or any program that's being built is to survey those key stakeholders, those owners, I guess you'd say, on the front end. So, here's kind of what we're thinking. What types of work would you say would be that you would use an offering like this for? Like, when would you use our professional attorney track? And to immediately get sort of those insights up front. So that helped to shape kind of what that looked like further out. So when we talked about it with recruits, what are we, what type of work within IP are we envisioning that they would be able to do? What type of work within litigation are we imagining would be coming into this, to this group? And then using that, once it's built, to go back to those individuals and say, look, here are some of the things that we've been doing with this group in this space, that they had already previously identified. So, it kind of like helps to fulfill the request when they're part of the process to create it. That makes sense.
So yeah, they feel ownership because they helped put together what they need. So that's fascinating, and that touches on kind of, I think, one aspect of change management, which is getting the broader firm to see this resource as part of the firm and making sure that they lean on and get all the value out of it. But then there's the next aspect of if you have a center like that, you do have an opportunity to create really standardized, best-in-class processes, and bring on new technologies, hopefully, and enforce a little bit more rigor. Have you seen that through this? By the way, is it a subsidiary?
No.
Sorry, that was my doorbell. Somebody rang 4 times. Is it subsidiary? Is it a wholly? Is it
wholly owned? It's not separate.
It's not separate. Yeah. So, do you find it easier to integrate things like new technologies also within the center and to?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly, because you're defining the process. You make technology as part of the process. This is brand new. So right. That's where you have a real ripe opportunity to experience great tech adoption and new process, sort of embracing change and new processes. when it didn't exist before, but when we stand it up, this is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's just built in.
Huge advantage.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge. So no, that's great. So we talked about kind of in the intro 4 kind of major themes: tech that we just talked about, globalization, changing regulation, and investment dollars as kind of, 4 of the big themes guiding the future of legal. I know for a lot of people, those are very exciting. For a lot of people, they're terrifying. Where do you fall on that spectrum?
Probably more in the exciting. I mean, I'm really excited to see what technology is coming down the pike. I mean, it's even just sort of looking in to see how technology has shaped things within our firm in the last couple of years. To understand the satisfaction of individuals when processes which are typically mundane or time-consuming are removed from their sort of workflows, or integrating their workflows in a meaningful way where they are now able to shift their attention to more sophisticated work. I think that just elevates the practice even more. So how do we, and to see, and I'm thinking about associates in this specific example, but to see them be more engaged in work because they're not, drudging through something that is not producing great ROI, both from their perspective, but also from we can get better ROI from a technology platform, is very satisfying. And so how do we take that to the next level and to the next practice and so on and so forth? And how do we integrate that into other workflows? How do we leverage our existing technology and maximize its capabilities in other areas where we didn't intend it as the initial use case? Yeah. And so I'm excited to see more products come out with sort of end-to-end solutions as well. I'd like to, either that or have them understand the integration points with other products where they can say, we partner well with this product or whatever, to be able to, provide us with a solution that is looking both upstream and downstream. This is what this means for this, but this impacts up here and down there and so on and so forth. So I'm excited to see tech, continue to develop in a way that doesn't just look at discrete solutions. Yeah.
Well, we started a company called LexFusion on that premise that maybe if we brought these things together, everybody could get more out of it. So I love your optimism. I share it. For the people that see the glasses a little bit less full, half empty, I think is the phrase. I think they fear the following scenario, pretty typical, but that technology moves up the value chain and lawyers have no work to do, right? That is what I hear, speaking at law schools. The general feeling, I think, is fear rather than excitement. What do you say to people like that? Why are they wrong, I guess?
Well, there's several reasons for that, right? If we don't do it, our competitors are doing it. So there's that sort of embedding that
necessity fear. Kind of running platform. Yeah.
The issue of, clients are asking, and we need to be positioned to be able to deliver in a more agile way, right? We need to have some tools in our tool belt that we can pull and use those levers when necessary. Is there a price issue here? Is there a cost driver for us? And if we use technology, we are able to have better margins on it. Mm-hmm. The other one is we can take on more work than what we're doing now. I mean, a volume perspective. And then also sort of the satisfaction.
more work.
Oh yeah, I usually lead with that one. Like that's
Right.
usually my like when I hear sort of these arguments about using certain things. Like let's talk about how much more work you could do if you're
Right.
so that's the one I lead with. And then the fourth one I think I've seen in firsthand is just like and I just spoke about it a few minutes ago, is the satisfaction of people who are using technology in their practice, because it just removes some things from them so that they can focus on more meaningful work. So
it's also just a human drive to get better and better at the things you do, a real satisfaction in being able to provide marginal improvement. And then I guess I couldn't agree with you more on all those points. I might just even add, while legal tech as a standalone industry is fairly new, technology improving the practice of law has been going on for a very long time. Obviously, we went from typewriters to computers to voice to text and all those things. Research that was done in libraries to research done on Westlaw to research done with Westlaw plus AI. And through all those changes, the practice of law has become bigger and more profitable. So there's also just a historical view where you could have had this point of view for the last 30 years and you'd have been wrong every decade. There's just no good reason to believe that there's something fundamentally different about this newer wave of kind of process improvement. But only time will tell. Maybe they're right. Maybe we're all screwed.
Shoot, and I need to diversify my skill sets.
That's right. Another reason to learn about technology. So you said most of it doesn't scare you, and a lot of it excites you. Is there any particular kind of categories of technology that you have your eye on, or any particular tools that kind of wow you right now?
Yeah, when I'm looking at technologies, drivers typically there's kind of a three-part component, right? There's the what am I going to get? What's the firm going to get from best ROI standpoint? Where can we most impact the client's experience? And then what helps our margins? So there's sort of those three different ways to consider it. I'll tell you, I'm really interested in the time by ping product. I think it just removes so much of the work that is spent entering time, but it also it captures so much that we're not capturing now. That's so right. It directly helps that revenue, the bottom line, the margin thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, and it's an incredible area of technology where it's not even the most glasses half empty person. Nobody benefits from manually putting the time in. Right. There's somebody who's like, oh, that's my rich quick scheme is entering people's time.
And if we use this, then it makes our all those other arguments that we just talked about don't exist.
Right. No, I agree. I think time capture is very unique in that context, and that like there's no enemy, there's no doomsayer. That's really interesting, and also in the longer term, I think one of the main pushbacks to the pessimist is that if you provide a ton of value, in theory, you should be able to charge for that value, just as people do in almost every other industry. They don't charge for the component parts of the iPhone. They charge for the value that is being created by the product. And the only way you can do that is if you do have to know the component parts, right? So your time is certainly right now by far the biggest component part. Over time, we'll see. Maybe it will be a combination of time plus technology, but until we deeply understand how long things really take, we're going to struggle. So I think that's a really interesting answer. So
yeah, it helps our data. I mean, like it helps us just do other things better.
Yeah. I want to make sure we hit a couple things in our last 5 minutes. So the pandemic appears to be ending. Almost everyone I know has gotten a shot or two, and it seems like almost everybody's going to get them in the next month or so. So the topic on everybody's mind now is what the hell is going to happen? Are we? I think a lot of us obviously, we are very happy to have this really trying time behind us and a lot of illness and death. But I think we can all agree that on a professional front, a lot of good has come out of it for a lot of people, able to spend more time with their families. And then also the American lawyer numbers are coming out, I believe, this week. It's going to be very interesting how they come out, but I'm hearing rumors that they are quite good. And those rumors are supported by things like special bonuses, which usually don't come out when people are doing terrible. So I'm curious as to what you think as somebody who's set up centers of excellence in a world where people can work from anywhere. How are we gonna respond to the change back to normalcy?
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting to see where people end up. I mean, I study the market quite intensely to see what's going to happen with this. And
me too.
Sure. But I really think where we'll end up is some sort of hybrid. Not we, my firm particularly, I'm not speaking about that. I think as an industry, we'll end up with some hybrid approach. But those programs can be difficult too. I mean, those are, very complex as it relates to making sure that the time in the office is meaningful and that the sort of intentional connections that need to be made when people are not in the office.
Yeah.
But I think that we have all appreciated this balance, this flexibility, sort of the understanding about and insights into the fact that people have lives outside of work and that those things are important to us.
Back in my day, you were not expected to have a life outside of work.
Right. So I think that, it'll be very interesting to see where firms come out. I mean, if firms came out of this doing business as they had done before, my opinion is that it'll appear very tone deaf.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, there's no question that the legal community has proven that it can, keep calm and carry on during a crisis like this. It does remain to be seen whether, like you said, can those bonds be created in the first place? Like every year, law firms are bringing on a new class and growing. Maybe if this went on for 5 years, there would be no cohesion. Who knows? That still remains an open experiment, but I think it's certainly a proven experiment that once that cohesion is built, it can certainly carry on through a quite long time. I mean, how long have we've been out of the office for over a year now at this point, which is pretty astounding. Well, hey, that's it for me. Anything else you want to say to our audience of futurist lawyers?
I don't have any final comments other than thanks for having me, Joe. It's been fun.
Absolutely. It's been so much fun. And thanks, Litera, as always, and see you next Thursday on Future Law Bootcamp. Thanks, everybody.